today, tonight we have a special guest, Geert Lovink, and Stephanie Rothenberg from the Department of Art. Has been gracious enough to agree to introduce him. So. Well.
Great. Oh my God. Thank you.
Hey.
Sorry, I'm going to trip you. So I am very excited to have here tonight Geert Lovink. I first met Geert in 2004 when I first started teaching here at UB, so it's been 11 years. He was co-organizing with former media study faculty, who some of you might remember, Trevor Schultz, a conference called Free Cooperation, which was an event exploring collaborative culture evolving out of DIY practices and hacker philosophy. And I say that meaning prior to what has become known in Rachel Botman's world as the Uber Airbnb sharing economy. And I was teasing Geert tonight that I was going to introduce him as one of the godfathers of tactical media, which is kind of embarrassing, but it's true. Geert has really been at the forefront of what we know as tactical media. He's been a lifelong internet activist, focused on critical discourse around network culture through both prolific publishing and years of participation and organization of radical new media events and groups. These include his current work as founding director of the Institute of Network Cultures, Inc., which is an initiative started in 2004 that has been instrumental in generating critical discourse within the field of new media through publications, events, and online dialogue. Inc.'s projects investigate a vast array of topics in the field of art and technology, including digital publishing, alternative economic models, and digital counterculture. Inc. serves as an interdisciplinary space merging theory and practice, bringing together researchers, artists, activists, programmers, designers, students, teachers. And one of the recent projects that I've been very excited about is called Money Lab, examining alternative digital economic forms, radical experience with cryptocurrencies, payment systems, and revenue models against the backdrop of this ongoing global economic decline. Along with the Institute of Network Cultures, Geert has authored over 10 books on tactical media and network culture, including Dark Fiber, Tracking Critical Internet Culture, Uncanny Networks, which is a collection of interviews with new media artists and theorists, and Networks Without a Cause, a critique of social media. In addition, Geert is a co-founder with Fitz Schultz of one of the first new media listservs for critical dialogue called NetTime, which is still in existence since it started in 1995. Geert is a research professor of interactive media at the Hogeschool, is that correct? Van Amsterdam, and is a professor of media theory at the European Graduate School. He earned his master's degree in political science at the University of Amsterdam and holds a PhD from the University of Melbourne. And when I was putting together this intro, I just found this nice little snippet on Wikipedia that I just wanted to read. As an internet activist, he describes tactical media as a, quote, deliberately slippery term, a tool for creating temporary consensus zones based on unexpected alliances. A temporary alliance of hackers, artists, critics, journalists, and activists. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Geert Lovink.
Hey, thanks. Wonderful. Yes, good evening. That was a great intro. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. And it's an honor to be here. It's wonderful. Tonight I'm going to speak about the internet politics of the self. But in the first half, I'm just going to give introduction to my work and the issues that are out there that cry for critique and intervention. Okay, well, this is maybe a reference to my previous book. It's called Zero Comments, but I love the picture. Okay, this is the website of our institute. What we try to do is set up online dialogues, networks around emerging topics, and then try to bring in critical angles through collaborations between artists, designers, researchers, and for instance, journalists, depending a little bit on the topic. A topic that I like a lot myself, which proves to be quite hard, but nonetheless rewarding, is this one on search and on search engines. Of course, it's primarily about Google, but not in total. At the moment, I'm preparing some kind of a Brechtian theater play with a theater group in Berlin about search. So that's going to be a theater play about search, which sounds, extremely challenging, very abstract. Because what is search? What can you do on stage with actors, on search? But it's so, it's so bloody important. It defines our knowledge culture at the moment. It's a monopoly that now the European Commission in Brussels wants to break up. I don't know if the news has reached you here already, but Europe wants to break up Google, yes. It wants to get rid of this monopoly. So yes, it is about this inherent tendency that, no, I wouldn't say happened overnight, but it is happening in all the corners of the information economy. This inherent tendency to form monopolies, and we see this, of course, happening particularly in the field of social media, but it is happening in other fields as well. Another project which we developed together with the center in Bangalore, the Center for Internet and Society, was this critical engagement with Wikipedia. Ran a couple of years, but then, as you might know, Wikipedia is stagnating at the moment. The culture doesn't want to change. It's the only, it's the only non-profit, really big website that everyone consults. But at the same time, it's also one of the only online ventures where less than 10% of participation comes from women. So it's kind of a geek power base, and the culture has completely stagnated inside. And this is a real worry, and I really want to inform you about this. So we've really tried to, critique Wikipedia. It was a completely useless undertaking, I have to say. Unfortunate, but yeah, it at least I have to be honest about that. Yeah, even though it was really global in nature and was very, very promising to, let's say, look from a really fresh angle at Wikipedia, let's say from a post-colonial perspective from India, just to name, one of the many views you could think of. Of course, now the gender issue is the main one. But anyway, so yeah. This is another one. Unlike us, it's still going. It's got a very active mailing list, and the question, what exactly our critique of Facebook and Twitter is, needs to be precised. And also, this project is mainly about, okay, you can have a critique, but how would you like to build a social network? What is the social for us? How would we envision it? Is it only about friends and updating and stuff like that? Or so it's quite fundamental questions. Most of them unresolved. But this project it got underway after a couple of years, and then in June, so pretty much a few months after this event. Of course, Snowden happened, and that put the whole thing completely in a different perspective. Because now we have this extra layer on top of it not only do we want our social encounters to be, not controlled by corporations or governments, but also we need to communicate securely. So how to do that? How can we take, the cryptography of all this in our own hands, and how would that look like? And these are all, I have to say, unresolved issues. A network that has been successful pretty much since 2005, 2006, ever since the birth of YouTube, I have to say, is Video Vortex, about the politics and aesthetics of online video. This was number 10 recently in Istanbul. There's a number of other ones that will happen. It's still very active field. My impression is, that it, of course, through the big rise, not only of YouTube, but think also of Netflix and others, it kind of moves a little bit towards maybe television studies type of things. On the other hand, the artists, there's still a lot of artists who are making video works and are conscious of the architectures of these online spaces. Some of them, like in the case of the social media, they run their own servers. So there's also a whole, let's say, array of alternative practices happening in this field too. And a more recent one was, in fact, an update of a previous one. So this was, in fact, we left it for a while. We were a bit sick and tired of our own critique of this somewhat European topic, which is, by the way, spreading across the globe, but hasn't maybe reached America, or is not so relevant here. This is the critique of the so-called creative industries. It's a very strong buzzword coming from the UK, then going to Australia, then going to places like Singapore and other places in Southeast Asia, where this kind of cultural policy, commercial policy has become quite influential. In maybe around 2008, also arrived in the Netherlands. I now since half a year or so work in the faculty of creative industries myself. So it was really important to come back to that topic. It included, of course, also the whole kind of confusing situation that we find ourselves in with the ideology of the so-called sharing economy. That you can see is effectively used in the case of Uber and Airbnb, which of course somehow connects ideologically even to the peer-to-peer foundation or to other initiatives that are dear to us and that are close to us. A lot of the hackers, of course, for decades have been promoting sharing, and file sharing is, something that is deeply ingrained in the internet culture. So to think and to rethink, what sharing is in relation to these, brutal labor policies of, in particular, Uber, I have to say. It was important for us to organize this, and it's connected to a lot of kind of publications and interventions that are happening, in particularly in Europe. So Stephanie has mentioned it already. So this is the MoneyLab reader, just out a couple of days ago. This is still a sketch of the reader, and the MoneyLab project deals with the kind of a critique of the revenue models that are out there, that are being offered to us, and that we have to think about or rethink or redesign. I'm mentioning 3 here: mobile money, mobile payments. The number 2 is crowdfunding. I think not here, maybe in the US, you would only think of Kickstarter, but in the Netherlands alone, we have about 50 crowdfunding platforms, let's say, for the churches, for development, for culture, right? For a whole range of development projects. And then the third topic would be cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular, which of course is dominated by the libertarian ideologies, and what do we make of it? What is our connection to that? Do we really want to have a currency that is based on the ideas of Ayn Rand? Is that really what we've been dreaming of our whole life? I don't know. I myself have always been very critical of the idea that everything had to be free and open, that everything had to be given away for free, not because you wanted it, not because it was a gift, but because it was the default. Right? Because some people in Silicon Valley had thought, yeah, this is the only way we do business here. You give it away for free, and then we get all the data and can make money with it. Yeah, we were critical of that model, but then almost immediately you have to ask yourself the question: okay, that might be a good critique, but on the long term, what should be a good model for an internet-based economy? And in my understanding, that would not be an economy where everything is for free by default. But by default of others, right? It's not your own default. It's just because you wouldn't know how to do that. Most successful recently has been this one. It's a collaboration with the art school in Rotterdam and with Florian Kramer there. So it's sort of an Amsterdam-Rotterdam collaboration. It's called Digital Publishing Toolkit, and these are experiments together with designers and publishers, how to deal with EPUB. Primarily EPUB, the new HTML5 standard, so that you can read books on your smartphone and on your laptop, right? And which over time should replace the very static kind of image of the PDF page. Well, having said that, it's easier said than done. I don't know if you are doing here a lot of experiments with EPUB. Yeah, they're kind of tough. So, of course, it's important, especially if you're young and you want to do something with publishing, to get involved and to get a feel for EPUB. There's certainly an exciting aspect of it in terms of the open standards and so on, right? It is HTML5. It's not owned by one of the large corporations. But then how does it relate, for instance, to print? We still do print, and all the experiments we've done here is in fact one where we put in the center the so-called multi-markdown software. So you have to get into the multi-markdown software, and then from there you can, for instance, export it to InDesign if you like, and then design a book or use other tools for that matter. This is one of the spin-offs. Silvio Larusso in Venice, Italy. He has, together with a lot of other people, made this website. And I'm quite inspired by his work. He was with us for a number of years in this toolkit project. And of course, this plays with the whole idea of the post-digital. What that means is, of course, that things start to mix, and this is one of the very important new, let's say, premises, that the material and the immaterial these days really mix. What does that mean? One of the nicest ones is this DRM chair, Digital Rights Management chair. You can only sit on it for 8 times, and then it falls apart. and that's a very, it's interesting. So it measures how many times you sit on it, and then when you've reached the 8th time, you can't reassemble it anymore. So symbolizing, of course, the whole tragedy that is happening right now. If you download a book on your Kindle or something like that, right? There are corporations out there that decide that you cannot move a book from one device to the other, that you cannot keep it, and that you cannot borrow it to other people, and that after 8 times reading, the book will delete itself, right? This is kind of the tragedy that we face. That we are faced with in terms of book publishing, and this cries really for critical interventions and practices. All this, for me, is kind of in a broader perspective of what we could call, the rise of internet criticism. Of course, as already been mentioned, we started with that already in 93 or 94. But yeah, someone like Nicholas Carr has really, especially in America, but also in Europe, turned it into a kind of a mainstream. And this is an important moment. This book came out in 2008, and that's of course a symbolic year. It's the year of the financial crisis. And it's also a year, I would say, that people started to ask critical questions about the development of the internet in the mainstream. Now this is the mainstream, so it's not academia, and we can have a whole conversation and a whole lecture about why is the academia absent in this, and why don't we know major let's say academics who are leading the debate about this. It's mainly business journalists who are active in this field. Yeah, and there's a reason. There's a reason for that. And of course, I feel sorry about that. But nonetheless, there's very little time to really mourn about that. Academics are not playing a role in this by and large. And so it is up to others to do that. And Nicholas Carr, for instance, an editor of the Harvard Business Review who stopped doing that work and then became an independent writer, is a good example of this. An odd example also of someone who asks questions, and also where you can kind of see that the asking critical questions about the internet is certainly not a leftist project. It's certainly not, by definition, a progressive thing. Sherry Turkle is really a very good example, a very established person in the world of the Media Lab, MIT, and the industry, who then, when her career is over, comes with a book like this. We're quite remarkable, because this book really asks a lot of questions about her own practices, the things that she's done or was involved in. I'm not saying she was directly responsible for it, but at least she was actively involved in it for a good 40 years. The title says it all, why we expect more from technology and less from each other. It's about kind of this thesis of the alienation, the social alienation that we reach. Just imagine a Starbucks cafe somewhere. You'll see everyone sitting there working on their laptops, working on their smartphones. They sit on tables, but they don't speak to each other, right? Well, that's very simple, summarized. That's the idea that she critiques here and asks, how did we get there, right? Now, there's a similar kind of move has this guy has made, Jaron Lanier. Very, very strange, very strange agenda also. Yeah, I think we need to talk about it because it shows also that this kind of conservative hippie agenda coming from the industry, then making some kind of critical move, then results in very strange debates. But this book, for instance, is entirely devoted to Wikipedia, but quite a different critique of Wikipedia than what we had in our, let's say, critical point of view network that we established together with the Germans, the Indians, and so on. This book primarily celebrates the unique individual Western self with his or her homepage, right? So the homepage then becomes kind of the throne of the Western subject, and which reaches its highest stage in the 90s with his or her odd website, and then falls apart, of course, later on when the social media come into play and everything is, of course, equalized and smashed. All the differences of all these odd individuals are being leveled, and what we have, of course, is the boring and very, very restrictive template culture of the Facebooks, the Twitters, and so on and so on. But in particular, in this book, he is focusing on the limitations and on the egalitarian drive of something like Wikipedia, which kind of smashes the differences and celebrate the gray middle ground. That's the thesis of this book. And the other book is clearly a post-2008 book, which is I think it's more interesting, but less polemic and less clear, in fact, as the first one. That is really one which asks the question of, how is the internet economy going to look like? A bit like the Money Lab question. That's interesting because there he as a technology critic, by then he was really a technology critic. He is one of the few and one of the first inside Silicon Valley who asked that question. How can we get rid of this ideology of the free? That's more interesting one. But yeah, I think he's not really going into the real issues. And then, of course, there's Andrew Keen, the British guy who moves to Silicon Valley, who doesn't make a lot of money in the late 90s. So he misses out and then and then becomes kind of a technology critic. So these are his books, first starting again with the Wikipedia, then moving on to a critique of the social media, different from the previous one from Sherry Turkle, in that this one he's primarily focusing on the cult of the self-promotion, right? So that's and then now last month or 2 months ago, he has published this main book. The internet is not the answer, which is kind of a summary of his argument. Right? The Real Critic, the one that I at least find the most interesting, is this Belarusian guy from Russia. Then through the Soros Foundation works himself up in the NGO world, works for a while in Germany, and then migrates to the United States. And then very quickly after that becomes kind of a technology critic, starts to write for major newspapers and so on and so on. He is not yet 30, so he's maybe a little bit older than you are, but only a few years, so not much. So he's still very, very young. Right now he's into some kind of a PhD program, but I'm not really sure which one. Because he's primarily now what we would call, a public intellectual. Quite remarkable when you're so young, and so these are his 2 books he has written so far. He is definitely one who is turning to the left, so that's quite interesting. He's going from, let's say, the Soros mainstream, the Karl Popper, let's say, mainstream, going to more critical and even socialist ideas. I'll come back to that later. So that's interesting, because remember, he's coming from Soviet Union. Although of course he didn't really grow up under the Soviet Union because he was too young. He was too young for that. Of course, he knows very well, because he's been, in Belarus, which is the only dictatorship we've left in Europe. There's only one, and that's precisely where he is from. This first book deals with the question of why internet is not, attacking or dissolving dictatorships. It's a very interesting thesis, because. Of course, remember Hillary Clinton's Internet Freedom Program was claiming that if we bring internet to the oppressed populations that have to suffer from dictatorship, they will rise up and get rid of the oppressors. Of course, nothing like that has happened, despite the Arab Spring, which, as we know, desperately failed and created an enormous mess, especially in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya. These are the current wars. Well, we have number 4, of course. How can I forget? Yemen is now definitely number 4 on that list. So that's this book, very interesting thesis. The other book is interesting because it comes up with the idea of the solutionism. And this idea is really good. It works quite well if you get it, if you really incorporate this meme, if you incorporate this idea. A lot of the stuff you hear around you, especially here in the US, but it doesn't really matter where you are, because solutionism is really a global ideology, then it really starts to make sense. Solutionism is very simply, if we summarize it, the idea is you have a problem, we'll bring in the technology and fix it for you, right? That's solutionism. Think of healthcare or something like that, right? That's the most obvious example. You don't want more doctors or better nurses or more healthcare. No, we'll bring you a robot. Huh? That's solutionism, right? Okay. But I'm also interested in this one. This is more for young. This is the voice of the young generation. This is really what I would say is kind of the net time of our age. It's called Pando Daily. It came out of a young group of journalists and people working for TechCrunch, owned by AOL, as you know, not being able anymore really to critique the large corporations in Silicon Valley. These people, this group, kind of quickly discovered that this was the case, that websites like TechCrunch are only there to promote the products. And really they started to focus on the Uber case. So if you want to find out something about Uber, you'll most likely end up with them. They have their offices in Silicon Valley. Funny enough, and I'm really not sure how that's going to play out. They themselves, of course, are a startup. How that's going to work out, how a radical and fierce critique of Silicon Valley can itself survive, within the legal framework of a startup, is questionable but I'm really keen to find out what's gonna happen to them. In my next book that comes out, let's say early next year, I've also written about this strange guy. This is Jonathan Franzen. He's my age. He's a well-known American novelist. And he started to get really annoyed, especially by Twitter. But also about Amazon and about computers in general. He hates Apple. He's got a really long list. So I wrote a long essay about this phenomena of internet anger in America. It's kind of what is that? Huh? Why somebody suddenly wakes up one day and says, I hate all that stuff? Huh? So yeah, it's of course I'm using the ideas of Nietzsche there of resentment. What is resentment? Exactly. So yeah, and it's in particular he has never written really one word about it explicitly, or a book or something, not even an essay. But this book, which is a translation of his by Karl Kraus, the apocalyptic World War I critic in Vienna, right? Who's writing when the whole Austro-Hungarian Empire falls apart. That guy, maybe Jonathan Franzen wants to compare himself to Karl Kraus, who knows, or sees that America is at that moment, when the empire crumbles. That could be, but anyway, half of this book is dedicated to his internet anger. So, but it is not a topic. You won't find it anywhere. It's not written on the cover, nowhere, right? It's only completely hidden in footnotes. So, so half of the book is the translation. The other half is footnotes, and more than half of those are dedicated to his internet anger. So, yeah, interesting. In Europe, this book is discussed widely. People don't really quite know what to make of it. They read it. Here, I'm not so sure. How many of you have read the Turkle? Many? One. You see, that's what I mean. One. I mean, this is supposed to be the mainstream Silicon Valley critique. It's a bit sold like, the 1984 of our age. So it is about a company which is a merger of Facebook and Google, and the company is called the Turkle. And it's about that kind of Minority Report type of activities that Terry is investigating. So it is about kind of preventing people from having a bad time, or preventing them from becoming criminal, or preventing them, for that matter, from becoming critical and having second thoughts, especially about the Turkle itself. So in that sense, yeah, it's interesting, but I know that it hasn't really done much, at least here in the US. From a more, also from a more critical side, activist side, there's this book, Astro Teller. I'm a big fan of her. She's based in New York. This is her first book. She has made a film, two films, two documentaries, one about Zizek and the other about a couple of theorists and critics. It's called The People's Platform, Taking Back Power and Culture in the Digital Age. And it's kind of it's a critique from, let's say, the Occupy group. She's been very active in these movements about student debt, and so this is her book, which kind of explains what happens when you have stuff like those social media monopolies, and what that does to society. I can highly recommend this book. It's very good introduction. Also mentions a lot of the authors that I've tried to cover here. Okay, this is the second part of the lecture. And now, after this general introduction, I want to focus really more on one issue. And that's the internet self, and its double, you could say. The double of the internet self is anonymous, and so that's why I also call it sometimes, the politics of masked design. So, but first, before we come to the mask, we have to see, what the culture is of the self. So, there are kind of 4 stages. We've already gone through them. One would be really 1980s and really a terminal culture, text only. Then, of course, the whole 90s, roaring 90s, and then after the dot-com crash and 9/11, you get the rise of Web 2.0, the reconstruction phase, if you like, the birth of user-generated content and blogs, and the disappearance of the larger groups, what in the 90s was still called the virtual communities, and kind of the splitting of virtual communities into these atomized units called, the user who is creating a user page on Facebook and so on and so on. And this is kind of where we still are, right? So we are kind of still in somewhere between the 3rd and 4th phase. It's a little bit unclear. It's certainly too early. I would love that, but I would love to have a number 5. But unfortunately, we're still stuck. We're still stuck in there somehow. That's a pity. But that's the situation. And the social media as marketing tool of the self. That's crack down on the second self. I wrote a whole chapter about that, about the campaigns of Facebook against the second identity. The second identity, which was very, very important and liberating and defining for the 90s, is now becoming a threat. Facebook closely working together with NSA, FBI, CIA, and all the other agencies to crack down on the second self, right? So they will do anything so that you will, not give the right information there. So so now we are in this age of the selfie. I kind of like the topic of the selfie. I don't mind it too much. I think it's kind of hilarious. It's completely banal. It's really over the top. So there's the selfie stick. I'm staying here in a hotel, and this morning at breakfast there was a whole group of Chinese tourists here visiting Buffalo, and the first thing they did, they got out the stick and made the picture for the breakfast. So this is really an important, cultural tool, although forbidden in certain places. It's interesting. We've published this analysis of the selfie by Brooke Wendt. She's based in Portland, Oregon, a young scholar about Instagram and the era of the self-portrait. It's kind of, there's a lot of material. On the one hand, it's kind of very obvious. So this is the Selfie Research Network, and they're doing quite interesting work. It's important, to understand this contemporary visual culture and to critique it. I haven't really seen a lot of kind of radical critique of the selfie yet. I've seen some stuff coming from Russia, but then again, that is then bordering on kind of anonymous, right? So the critique of the selfie then kind of flips into anonymous. This is an interesting artist. I like her work a lot. Her name is Amelia Uma. She is Brazilian, Spanish, but also sometimes based in LA. And she has turned this whole culture of the selfie into a lifestyle, and she's documenting this lifestyle. But she's taking out a lot of very, very interesting aspects of the selfie culture and of the social media culture. So, if you're interested in this, please check it out, because it's not necessarily critical, but what she does is she provides all the elements for the critique, and so it's very, very important and crucial, preparatory work, which I think also is what we should expect artists to do. And the fact that she just stands up and declares, "I don't like selfies," well, that is not, so remarkable. So, her work is more on a structural level, and I appreciate that. Another aspect which is really, really important to understand is the political economy behind it. There are a few scholars working in that direction. One of them, for instance, Anne Helmond, and they describe this big transformation from what is called the link economy to the like economy, right? Because all this social media is based on the idea that people like, and this is in fact how the money is being made. So this is also a good starting point for a critical analysis. But then, of course, and this is really important to mention here, there is a moment, and that moment is in June 2013, and there is an internet before and after Snowden. There is no doubt. So no matter what you study or do, you will find out that this is really, really an important moment. Maybe more important for Europeans, I believe. Less so for maybe for Americans, but at least in Europe, this has been really, really a wake-up call about the massive surveillance programs that are out there, that do not just only come from the NSA. He worked at the NSA, but really what he uncovered is really a global effort to massively store and surveil on every possible citizen that is using all these technologies. And this has been really important for the self, because I think the kind of naive feeling that maybe would have existed before can no longer be maintained, right? And this is really an important moment in sort of a new culture of enlightenment, maybe, if you like, of awareness. What is going on out there. This is a first attempt coming from Berlin to make a critical analysis about the internet after Snowden by a young guy from the bloggers generation, Michael Seemann. He's part of the networks in Berlin around the Chaos Computer Club, Republika, Netzpolitik, Digitale Gesellschaft, and so on. It's a whole network. Maybe you've heard about it because Laura Poitras, but also Jake Applebaum, they are based in Berlin. They're part of this ecology. So Berlin is really the center of critical thinking and critical practices in this field. The publication came out last week, so it's a translation from German into English. 10 rules for the internet after Snowden, and you can download it. So all the publications that I mentioned, of course, can be downloaded for free on networkcultures.org. So if you're interested in this text, they're short, they're 20,000 word essays. So what is also important there is that in the aftermath of Snowden, people have really started to look at the new dependencies, especially from Brazil. Remember, Rousseff was one of the world leaders, together with Merkel and a few others, who were personally spied on their mobile phones, and they were very, very pissed off about that, and she really started an investigation about not only that surveillance of her own stuff, but about the dependency, let's say, of this emerging world power called Brazil, primarily from the US. And here, this kind of is kind of the new map. And this is a map that is dominated by this centralization of the infrastructure, right, along very, very neo-colonial lines. And so instead of creating a network, the internet ideology promising, a distributed, decentralized network, this is kind of the new, interdependency that we ended up with. And this is very, very important to think through, right? All the traffic going from Brazil goes first to America. Even the traffic inside Sao Paulo itself, the traffic inside Brazil all goes first through the United States and then bounces back to Brazil, right? Now that is maximum dependency, right? We're not even talking about the lacking, cables, sea cables between Latin America and Africa that literally do not even exist, right? We're talking even about the traffic within the. Now this is an older one, a somewhat better map, but here the picture is by and large is the same. The dependency and the major traffic is very clear. So if we want another internet and say, well, the internet is broken, the internet needs to be repaired, we thought this is really where we need to start. We need to really start on this level. And one of the really important places to start also is to attack the cloud ideology. The cloud ideology itself is the embodiment of the centralization of the internet and facilitates the economy of surveillance. So if we want to understand anything what's going on, we need to understand that this structure needs to be dismantled. So if we want to think about, another internet, other more democratic ways of communication, these economies of scale that facilitate both the social media platforms and the surveillance, they meet here. They meet in this place. So we need also to develop, and this is what has been in the making for some time now, and which will become more clear over the next couple of years, is kind of a critical theory of infrastructure and logistics. If we want to understand the internet, we can not only look at the well-known names of companies or Silicon Valley. We need to look at this. And we need to also ask ourselves, which this website kind of naively does, is it possible to think of kind of a re-decentralization? What would that be? Is that possible, for instance? Luckily, last week, for instance, in my school, they decided to cancel all the contracts with Google and Dropbox and all the rest and install their own in-house cloud. They still call it cloud because, they're IT people, that's what they can sell to each other, but effectively it's no longer a cloud. It's just what we had in the past, a bunch of local servers that just are in the building of the Polytech in my case. What's the re-decentralization is an important question, and people who have looked into this quickly came up with this idea that if there's ever going to be, a next phase, that has to be a federated network. A federated network which can be an alternative to the three classical models of networks that Paul Barron, then working at the Rand Foundation in 1981, drew up. Because why are these fraud? Because obviously the ideology of the distributed network at the very end resulted in A, right? So C resulted in A, and that is the kind of the. So C is not the end point. No, C results in A, and this is the problem we are now facing with. So we cannot just go back and say, oh, C, oh, that looks nice, right? No, we're not stupid. C results in A, right? And if we don't study that, if we don't want to recognize that, and that's why, but then again, we're not very far in this discussion, I have to say. So this is at the very, very beginning, because I would love to present you, number D here, and just move them away and say, well, this is number D, and this is a bit of a problem. We're not there yet, but at least there is an awareness that this whole thing got stuck. This is not the way to go. Myself, together with a friend of mine, Ned Rossiter in Sydney, I've been working on a very, very small piece of the puzzle there, and it's called organized networks. It's a proposal to come in that direction, starting from a critique of the social media as kind of an exploitation of the weak links. So one of the big problems of how Facebook and all the rest became such huge monopolies is this exploitation of the weak links, namely that you tell them who are the friends of your friends of your friends, right? These are the weak links, and this is how they can grow so exponentially fast. And this is kind of the network logic that they have exploited to a maximal extent. Now, how can we sabotage that logic, right? How can we sabotage the weak link? Well, in one way you could say, well, by not providing these data to them, okay. But maybe there's also something else wrong in the architecture of the network itself. And in our analysis, that is also that we have not given enough attention to the strong links. That in the network architectures, there is nowhere real attention to the strong links. Now you can define yourself, what strong links are. I don't mind. This is really open for debates. But think about, why I was here 11 years ago with Trevor. Think about forms of collaboration. Think about, how smaller groups can more effectively work. I've always thought it was strange that particularly Facebook was never interested in providing people with collaborative tools. Look at Facebook groups, it's kind of broken, it doesn't really work, it cannot. If you want to really start to organize something, Facebook is nice for mobilization, but not for organization. This is very, very well known amongst activists, but even in the soccer club of my son, this is known, right? They are stuck with email, WhatsApp, and Facebook, and they just don't know anymore how to organize the soccer club, because none of the platforms is really helping them. They are very good to spread the message, yes, but who is defining the message? And this is this is a problem. Another initiative that I want you to show you and talk a little bit about is this is a little bit Dutch, but it doesn't matter. It's because we love design. So it's kind of an attempt to build the bridge between the geeks and programmers who are very much into crypto and cryptography, and the world of the designers, and to bring them together. Because I don't know if you've used good crypto software. It's a major disaster. It doesn't work, and it is not made, for the 7 billion people that are now out there, already on the internet using their phones, etc. Right? So we really need quickly to do something there, and this is, let's say, this is our contribution. It's a design contest to bring these two communities together. For the moment, it's only happening in the Netherlands and Belgium, but we really hope to organize something similar soon together with others in Europe, in the States, and hopefully elsewhere. One of the aspects, I'm not going to talk long about it, because this is the home of Zach Blas, so I'm not gonna do his class here. He can explain this much better to you than I can. But it's a topic I love, and I really find it appealing also for artists, in the same way as I think crypto design is something artists can really do a lot with, and there are tons of projects out there already dealing with it. The same is the case with this mask design. Obviously, the mask that we know best, is this odd Guy Fawkes one. I have one myself. My son has one too. I mean, it's kind of it's appealing. Gabriel Coleman has written the history of Anonymous, the group, the hacker group, and the rise and the fall of it. I can highly recommend you her book. It's also a tragic book because it in depth explains all the mistakes they made, the infights they had, the betrayal, the spying. It's not a good story, but it's a very funny story, and it's a story a lot of activists can learn something from. And it's not in the past. It's not about the Paris Commune, right? It is about Anonymous, right? And it happened in 2011, 2012, 2013, and right now in America there's at least 20 to 40 people, in jail. Sitting long sentences for that. There's now quite a lot of already highly commercial. It went really fast. Yik Yak is a really weird one, strange. I don't know. Many people here use Yik Yak. It's kind of an anonymous social media messaging. But the problem of this and also of this one, it's called Secret. Is that they are not secret, and this is, of course, it takes a while, but then someone reveals about it. So the problem is, of course, that they are all based on the Silicon Valley venture capital model. Even though they have kind of good intentions, they kind of repeat the same business models, and because they repeat those models, it's inevitable that they start to sell, the identities of the so-called secret users, right? So there's something wrong there, but I'm not so disencouraged. It's early days for this kind of stuff, and it's just important that you come on board. That if you're interested. There must be ways to solve this, or at least I'm naive to believe that we can. There's just a lot of it already out there. This one is specifically for avoiding access. I like that, but this one is also nice. So this is of course, a bit, I think, German product. where you put your phone in, and it will definitely not transmit, because even when you switch off your phone, remember the phone's still on and is active, and people can trace your whereabouts. So with this, that is no longer possible. So that's a nice gadget. This has been experimented with and thought through already, for quite some time. This is a I find very, very impressive product by Nobotic Research in Zurich. It's already from 2010. They produced a book with it, really with elaborate, mask theory. The project is called Opaque Presence, and so is the book. So this is, I find there's beautiful mask design out there. So definitely, this is another one. This was an exhibition at Mediamatic. This is a series of photography done by Moby, the musician. So he's quite interested in it. He has Zach Blass, of course, his project, but there's many others who have kind of designed this opaque, because this is a mask everyone can wear, and if everyone's wearing, etc., etc. Yeah. This is a very inspiring website and project by Bogomir Doringer, originally from Serbia, now based in Amsterdam, and this is a traveling exhibition. So if you're looking for inspiration, this is a really good place. The exhibition is called Faceless. And this is one of the many, he's kind of covering artists. This is Hester Scheurwater, and this is also an interesting one because, that's no longer really possible because maybe smartphones don't make anymore these types of flashes. So it's already with the new generation of phones, this is no longer possible, but this was, for a while at least, an established way to communicate in the gay scene on dating sites, right? And then of course there is the inevitable one, which is very, very funny. I came across one just a couple of days ago. You have absolutely no idea, of course, who was in it. I was a bit surprised because I walked into a bookstore and saw this person reading a book by Zizek, and then I thought, okay, well, that's, but otherwise, we don't know. So there's a lot of artists, of course, working with the burqa and in making very, very interesting, confronting artworks with it. Okay, thank you very much.
You talked about dismantling the cloud, and I think that's really noble. I think it's a great form of activism. How do you combat the economic benefit of, like you mentioned, the economies of scale of cloud computing? Do you think that there's an alternative in the theory of cloud computing, or is it just a matter of overcoming those economic?
Well, I'd say that cloud computing is a deliberate economic policy to centralize infrastructure. And then you can ask yourself, why would you centralize infrastructure? I don't think it's really a matter of costs and cost saving. In the end, you could also argue that what is a cost saving right now, in 5 or 10 years, maybe no longer, right? So there could even be, let's say, a Marxian theory of diminishing not diminishing profits, but let's say diminishing, extra computational power, for instance, or the diminishing extra costs of storage devices and so on. That's suddenly, within the range of imagination. I never imagined, that I would buy a drive, a 1 tera drive for $100, or is it already less? I don't know. Huh? Less? Mm-hmm. Less. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. So I don't see that if you follow, Moore's law, or if you follow, that this is an inevitable way of, and maybe also, there's a political and cultural benefit of decentralization. I mean, we know that that whole debate in the whole ecology, sustainable movement debate around the way how we generate energy. So, but let's say it's an open question. Let's go for it. Let's research it. Right? We're here in the university. Let's go for it. Huh? Let's find out if I'm right or wrong, or if what kind of models are out there. For me, these are political statements, and we need to find out, because the internet, as it is running right now, is bankrupt. Right? And do we really want that? Have we already written off the internet and said, well, it belongs to the NSA and that's it, end of story, we can now do something else? Well, it could be that, this is true. Would be, I haven't met, the first person yet who said that. Would be interesting, but there's a little bit of, offline romanticism happening sometimes, but that's something else. These are kind of people who dream of offline reservations somewhere in Florida or somewhere nice. Of course, it's not, so somewhere nice where there's no internet and where you can just have a kind of old school holiday or something like that. That is certainly out there. And, you can find people who express that desire. Yeah, but that's where we are at the moment.
So I'm interested in your periodization, pre and post.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think back to 15, 20 years ago where we were talking about a different program called Echelon. And I wonder if you might just comment on how you see these as two, what is the difference between these two moments? Obviously, you're choosing Snowden's revelations as a kind of watershed, whereas 15, 20 years ago, Echelon also was a moment comparable. How do you see them as different?
No, they're not really different, but the difference is that the scale, the amount of people who are using it, the dependencies on it, is a complete different issue altogether. People depend on it in their daily lives, in their communication, in the way they depend on the parents in the village or in their country where they're from. Right? So that is the main difference.
So you wouldn't say, for example, the complicit participation of some private corporations, right? Echelon is one which was generally understood as a state surveillance.
Yeah, and also very particular states, right? Quite few. If you read what Assange writes about it, but also Snowden himself, for them it was a very, very important moment, and it was maybe a motivation to start doing the work, ending up where they are now, namely in the Ecuadorian embassy and in an apartment somewhere in Moscow. So that's where they are, awaiting trial. So. Yeah, no, I don't think there is a big difference. But, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the critical theory of internet infrastructure and logistics. I think that makes really much sense. But I'm also wondering when we are now moving to the phase where Facebook and Google are building drones to basically build their own internet infrastructure to get rid of the submarine cables, for example, and basically colonize the whole planet. And I'm
Not
wondering
to
what's
get
your-
rid of the submarine cables, but in Africa to build the bridge, right, between the cable landings on the coast and the fact that they often don't go very far inland. Yeah. So certainly they don't want to replace the cables, but they want to make better use of them because they're underutilized. Even right now, capacity that is there in Africa cannot be used because of the lacking fiber optic mesh, the grand network on the continent itself. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, for me, the drone projects in particular are propaganda projects. They are not infrastructural projects. So they are kind of, they want to create a short-term hegemony with the aim to establish the long-term power base. But these are kind of what in the lab world is called a prototype or something like that. The prototype is never the product itself, but to showcase the prototype is very, very important. It can really establish your reputation. It can establish, your position in the field. But then, the hard work will have to come. For instance, what Google is now doing in a number of U.S. cities here, providing the city with a fiber optic network because the other telecoms were too lazy to do it.
I'm wondering how you see the unfolding landscape of surveillance mania. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, as you say, post-Snowden and before. But it seems like different groups talk about surveillance in different contexts. So if you're a foreigner in America, you experience surveillance on a different level than if you're born here. If you're poor, you experience surveillance on a different level in food stamps. So in a way, there's this, the middle class is very upset about having their mobile phones surveilled. Oh my goodness. Well, so that's a big concern, of course. But so it happens on so many different levels, and I'm wondering if the sensitivity of kind of like the personal position of having one's frivolous data viewed is actually an entry point to think of the surveillance problem as a societal problem.
Well, that's the hope, of course, of many of the activists that these stories will be used to unleash a broader debate. But whether that's happening, that's a good question, and that's an urgent question which is now on the table in Berlin itself. Where the activists are most involved can see that they are running against, let's say, a glass wall of what they call a new normalcy. A new normalcy that recognizes the problem but is not effectively doing anything about it and is not willing to go, for instance, the step that you are proposing. So that there is an initial kind of uproar, and then not much is done. Another classic case of that, will be the situation in Brazil. Will Brazil really start to develop its own infrastructure, yes or no? Because if not, this uproar is mere rhetoric, right? And that I find it a little bit early days. We're 1.5 years into the Snowden thing. We ourselves, we think more about the Snowden documents at the moment, so that is really still very, very, early stage. We're still in the early stage. Remember, only 5% of the documents have been released, 5% in 1.5 years. There's a whole team of investigative journalists working on further stuff that needs to come out. But I'm concerned about that. Do we really use the momentum in an optimal way? Yes or no?
Morozov has, you just, there was something on Midtime actually, posted Morozov's recent piece at kind of like landing at that same spot. Can you, like from the being touched by an individual event where you realize something is amiss, deal with the political underpinnings in the way it was, it's not the path to it.
Yeah. Well, that question is on the table now. So. Yep.
So I was interested in what you were saying about decentralization, and it seemed focused on like a topological level of the network, and you showed the data flows and the different fault patterns, different diagrams. But so I'm assuming that your OrbNet is addressing networks on the topological level. Because I'm also wondering what you think about addressing centralization on like the application level of like
or on the political level.
Because
that's the ultimate one.
Everyone's traffic goes
that's the real one, right?
Yeah,
so that's the hardest one. My level is the easiest one by far, and it's not resolving any of the larger questions, but it's a one. I myself find this very urgent, in particular for activists who are active in social movements, because the social movements are becoming more and more depending on these social media platforms, right? And sometimes that's celebrated, but we know from experience, time and again, that it might work, in the short term with mobilizations, but it is not building up an autonomous, independent infrastructure for these very movements, right? So, and this is one of the explanations, there are many, many more, why movements grow so fast and disappear so fast and then cannot be, reignited and are doomed, let's say, to arise and to disappear, almost, in a Baudrillardian play of appearance and disappearance. And that's not really what I'm very interested in. So, and that's of course very, very basic, very low level. And it doesn't really address, it's also not presented as an alternative, as a solution. It's just one of the many, many things, we should work on. But it's one which I find is urgent. Because of look at Spain, the debate now happening between the social movements and Podemos, the party there, which is on the rise. This is all about this very, very question. Or in Greece, well, maybe in Greece to a lesser extent, but Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.